chapter 1, verses 9 to 10. God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. It is no wonder that tourism has become such an integral part of our economy. We have so much to offer. We have beauty that is indeed out of this world, indescribable in words. It has to be experienced. It has to be protected and preserved. It has to be shared wisely. What do you think are our best features? Is there more that we can do to promote our history? We have wonderful tours and museums now. How can we make our history come more alive for our visitors and students alike? As we travel, let us keep our eyes open to see what may be usefully adopted to reflect our own Bahamian flavor. Is there more that we can do to promote our culture? What do we consider to be main aspects of our culture? Junkanoo, music, art, drama, food, and so much more. We have religious tourism, and that will offer others a glimpse of God's glory in our section of God's vineyard. More retreats, seminars, workshops, conferences, and worship opportunities would be ideal. What if each island were developed as a place for others to visit and find spiritual renewal? One island could have a facility for musicians to come and worship together, make music, write hymns and songs. Instruments may be provided or persons may bring their own. One island could be outfitted to cater to disabled persons with activities that enable them to enjoy the outdoors and have new experiences. And we are blessed to have in our midst a group of the visually impaired here today. Another island can promote silence with stargazing, nature walks, and other sporting activities that allow individuals to spend time alone and be quiet in the presence of the Lord. Yet another island can offer campgrounds, one communal gathering spot in an actual building, and the rest of the site offers places for tents. This is for those who like to rough it in the wild. And of course, they can assist with gardening and eat their own produce. The sky is the limit as to what else we can do to use our beauty and quiet in a noisy, busy world. Let us pray. Lord our God, help us to be more grateful for our many blessings. Help us to make decisions that will promote all aspects of our nature. Sports tourism, medical tourism, etc. And may we have other creative ideas. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear, minds to think, and feelings that promote harmony and peace in our land. May you, the honorable members of this House, have wisdom as you seek to discern what is the best way forward for national development. May our people be blessed because of the positions you hold and the roles you play. May God bless you and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sand, Marvin Dames, Frankie Campbell, Dionisio Diagula, Michael Pintar, Darren Hensfield, Ramal Ferreira, Lanisha Rose, Brenzo Rose, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Dawn Miller, Takesha Parker Edgecombe, Iram Lewis, Carlton Bole, James Aubrey, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Holmes, Michael Fuchs, Miriam Rackley Emmanuel, Reese Shipman, Reuben Rami, Ricky Mackey, Shannon Long Cartwright, Chanel Ferguson, Glenn Hannah Martin, Kaizo Fox, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, this morning we are privileged to have in our midst in the gallery members from the Public Hospitals Authority. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. The Ophthalmic Nursing Program, and a group from the Bahamas Alliance for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Could you please stand? Thank you very much. At this time, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to speak very briefly just to welcome our guests this morning. Over the course of this month, we are paying particular attention to the challenges of blindness and visual impairment. Over the course of the month, we will have a number of activities, some of which have already passed. But basically, the idea is to sensitize the public, and in particular, the seeing public, to understand that while we are gifted by God with the wonderful ability to see, that may be something that we can lose for whatever reason. And so one of the themes of this month is to try and get our people and our young people to understand the need to protect their sight, particularly to eat well, to eat leafy green vegetables and colorful vegetables and fruit, but also to ensure that that you go and see on a regular basis some of these wonderful professionals to ensure that you can get your vision tested on a regular basis, to identify if there are problems with your eyesight so that intervention can take place at a point where that eyesight is potentially recoverable. That includes some of the more common problems, but also diabetes, hypertension, and other things that lead to blindness in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so with those very brief words, Mr. Speaker, we just want to say welcome, not only to the nurses that are here, but also to the members of the Bahamas Alliance for the Blind and Visually Impaired, who remind the public on a daily basis that while they may not be able to see, they are no less a part of us as a part of our Bahamian community. So welcome, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, honorable member. I note that today, based on the communication, that today is considered White Cane Day. And I also note that the organization intends to conduct an exercise, and perhaps it might be good for us who can see to wear a blindfold for a while, to have a better appreciation for the circumstances that those members have to live with on a daily basis who vision is impaired. Communications by the Speaker. At this time, I wish to table a number of audit reports. The first report to be tabled is the report from the Auditor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, an audit of the Ministry of National Security, Urban Renewal Department for Grand Bahama for the fiscal years July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2017. Order that the document to lie on the table. The second audit report to be tabled is an audit report by FTI Consulting dated the 16th of August 2018. This is a report on the findings of an examination of Attilio Holdings Company apartment leases. The report was prepared for the Office of the Auditor General of the Government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas by FTI Consulting. Order that the document to lie on the table. The third audit report is another audit report by FTI Consulting dated the 16th of August 2018. It's a report on the examination of, I'll spell this company name, XUA Company Lease to Own Agreement. And this audit report was also prepared for the Office of the Auditor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas by FTI Consulting. Order that the document to lie on the table. And the final audit report is an audit by the Office of the Auditor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for the year 2015, and for the period from July 1st, 2014 to June 30th, 2015. Order that the document do lie on the table. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the international obligations, economic and ancillary measures, implementation of United Nations Security Council Resolution, Iraq, Order 2017.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further tabling of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the international obligations, economic and ancillary measures, implementation United Nations Security Council Resolution, Afghanistan, Order 2018.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further tabling of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the House a copy of the following: the Currency Notes and Coins Amendment Number 2, Order 2018.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further tabling of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment Number 4, Regulations 2018.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document to lie on the table. Further tabling of documents. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to lay on the floor of the House a copy of the following: the Anti-Terrorism Regulations 2018.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
May it please the Honorable Speaker. Sir, at 11:25 p.m. Tuesday, 16th of October, a call was received at the fire department of a fire at the Ministry of Education's warehouse unit on University Drive. Initially, 3 fire units were dispatched, and upon their arrival, heavy smoke and flames emanated from the building. Director Walter Evans of the fire department contacted the airport fire crew, dispatching an additional truck to render assistance. Upon their arrival, visibility in the building proved difficult, as well as difficulty in gaining access to all areas of that building. Consequently, lock cutters and the jaws of life were used to gain such entry. Upon entry, a large number of paper material, including files, cleaning, office, and toilet supplies, were engulfed in flames. Because of the setup of the warehouse and the chain link fencing of its interior, it proved difficult to extinguish the multiple seats of fire. Shortly before 5 a.m. this morning, myself and many other senior personnel from the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture came to assist in the extinguishing of that fire. This morning at 9:30, the fire continued to burn. However, it was determined by the senior officer, Officer Knowles, on the scene, that the building and its contents were completely destroyed.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
I'm obliged, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, stand to report on my recent trip to Washington, D.C. to attend the 8th regular meeting of the Organization of American States Inter-American Committee on Education, of which the Bahamas is the chair. Our delegation included 4 senior officers from our ministry, namely Undersecretary Ms. Saritha Clark, Deputy Director Ms. Sharon Poitier, Education Consultant Ms. Janice Knowles, and Senior Education Officer Ms. Marcia Seymour. The trip for the 4 senior officers were paid in full by the Organization of American States, who also paid in full my accommodations while in Washington. Mr. Speaker, as a background to this meeting, it is to note that in February of 2017, the Bahamas hosted the 9th Ministerial of Educations of the Organization of American States under the theme, An Inter-American Agenda, Building Alliances and Advancing Towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And during that meeting, the Organization of American States member countries signed the Declaration of the Bahamas, signed also several memoranda of understanding, and hosted the first educational best practice in trade exhibition. Since that time, the Bahamas has conducted several meetings in its capacity as chair to further the OAS's education agenda in concert with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals number 4. Principally, that theme centered around the development of horizontal cooperation actions that strengthen the efforts of OAS member states to advance the development of educational policies in 3 prioritized themes. 1, quality, inclusive, and equitable education, strengthening of the teaching profession, and comprehensive early childhood care. Also, during the February 2000 meeting in the Bahamas, sir, working groups were formed by ministries of education around each of the aforementioned areas to continue their efforts to implement actions that will allow them to comply with some of the outcome targets of goal number 4. This Inter-American education agenda was conceived by the OAS member states as a tool to provide countries with an opportunity to reflect over and address the most pressing international educational priorities from a regional perspective, so that shaping the international agenda, commitments and proposals to the needs of this hemisphere, as well as to showcase good practices and participate actively in high-level policy discussion. On the first full day of my visit, Mr. Speaker, I chaired a session entitled Education and Employment in a Changing World of Work. This session featured a talk by Ms. Maria Luz Vegas, coordinator of the Future of Work Initiative at the International Labor Organization, commonly known as the ILO. In my presentation, I informed ambassadors and ministers that within the last decades, the world has witnessed technological changes and advancements and innovations at a pace never before witnessed in human history. Among these were the welcoming of personal computer in the 1980s, the internet in the 1990s, and mobile computing and smartphones in the 2000s. Today, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, blockchain, big data, cloud computing are part of daily life and constitute the foundations of what is now called the 4th Industrial Revolution. In that speech, sir, I continue, quote, "These emerging technologies and innovations have changed the economic landscape, impacting the nature of jobs and the profile of skills required in the labor force, which has resulted in the simultaneous creation of new jobs and the elimination of various professions as they become obsolete," end quote. Mr. Speaker, that meeting highlighted the collective understanding among participants that today's workers must be prepared not only with technical and vocational skills, but also with the crucial socio-emotional and non-cognitive skills, commonly referred to as soft skills. It was acknowledged and recognized that the deficiency of these skills, as noted by the World Economic Forum in 2018, is that in the Latin America and Caribbean region has the biggest skills gap in the world. That was of note and concern to the ministers attending that meeting. It was determined that because of these realities, it is critical for our respective societies to rethink education with a particular focus on policies to transform and expand the technical and vocational education and training of our citizens. The two-day session featured presentation by senior members of the Development Bank of Latin America, in particular, Mr. Julio Suarez Migliozzi. There were also presentations by Mr. Javier Botero, lead education specialist at the World Bank, Ms. Rita Almeida, also of the World Bank, Dr. Adriana Blanco of the World Health Organization, Ms. Maria Ubida of UNICEF, Ms. Cecilia Barbary of UNESCO, and Ms. Luisa Villegas of the Pan American Development Foundation. It was noted during my presentations and chair of those several meetings, Mr. Speaker, that we gave a report on the accomplishments of our CHIP sessions in these last 2 years. In May 2017, we signed a Pro Futuro project here in the Bahamas, which geared improving technology, the use of technology in primary schools instructional programs. In 2017, December, I was invited to be the featured speaker at the Labor Ministerial in Barbados. Between the period 2015 and 17, the Bahamas developed partnerships with other international organizations, such as the World Bank, IDB, UNESCO, and others. In February of this year, our ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Sidney Colley, made a presentation at the CD meeting titled Harnessing Education for Sustainable Development. And the following month, in March, we signed an agreement with the OAS to enable us to further our improvement in early childhood education called the Bahamas Early Start Project at a tune of $286,000. In June of this year, I attended the in-country I-10 workshop for teachers in Panama. That conference featured critical thinking skills. Just before the end of our chair, the delegation from Antigua and Barbuda, Mr. Speaker, was elected to succeed the Bahamas as the chair of the Inter-American Committee on Education. They will assume their responsibility in March of 2019.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. That the communication to lay on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I give thanks to Almighty God for another opportunity to stand in this place and represent the good people of Southern Shores. Mr. Speaker, I want to join in with the Minister of Health in recognizing the huge delegation from the public hospital authorities and the Alliance of Blind and Visually Impaired Persons. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister responsible for social services, I had the privilege to participate in some of the activities of Blind Awareness Week. And I found it to be most uplifting and encouraging to see that notwithstanding the challenges that are faced by that community, their spirits are high, and there is one in particular who's most mischievous, one Mr. Roll, most mischievous. He invited me to play this game of throwing the ball in the hoop, only to move the hoop around, making me think I couldn't get it right. And so I want, as the minister, to give them the undying support of the ministry and my personal support. And I take this opportunity to remind persons who are able to see that but for the grace of God, we can wake up this morning with 20/20. And if we're lucky enough, go to bed not being able to see anything, maybe because of some accident or some incident. And so the awareness to prevent blindness is important. The awareness to take care of your sight while you still have it is important. And then finally, the respect for persons who, notwithstanding the challenge, are going about their daily lives, using their white cane, trying to maintain and secure their independence. They deserve our respect and admiration. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, for the communication at hand. I'm pleased to stand in this honorable House to share information of one of the United Nations Convention addressing matters and concerns for women within the portfolio of the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development. 25 years ago, on 6 October 1993, the Bahamas ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, also known as CEDAW, often referred to as the Women's International Bill of Rights. CEDAW discourages discrimination of women on the basis of their sex or stereotypes, and instead promotes equity and equality. On the 25th of October 2018, the Bahamas will make its second appearance before the committee to present its 6th periodic report on the implementation of the conventions during the 71st session of CEDAW to be held in Geneva, Switzerland. Mr. Speaker, today I'm most pleased to recognize the hard-working members of the CEDAW committee who are sitting in the gallery. And with your leave, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask them all to stand. Thank you very much. And so, Mr. Speaker, without attempting to brag, you would see that I could claim ownership of the entire gallery on both sides. The list is long, Mr. Speaker, but I will note that the committee is headed by Dr. Jacinta Higgs from the Department of Gender and Family Affairs. The group is diverse. We have representation from the Attorney General's office. We have representation from the Ministry of Health. We have representation from the Ministry of Education. We have representation from Urban Renewal, Senior Citizens, Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Yes, Mr. Henfield, we won't leave them out. And the makeup of the committee is an indication of how important the whole question of gender equality and the removal of discrimination is to us as a whole, because it affects every ministry, every sector within our society. I would have missed out national security. National security is an important component in the makeup of our committee. And so on behalf of the government of the Bahamas, I want to extend to Dr. Higgs and her entire committee my heartfelt gratitude for the work that they've put in, the countless sleepless nights. I'm informed that right up to last night, some persons would have been up until 3, 4, maybe even 5 a.m., making sure that things are falling into place. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I'm very, very thankful to all former ministers of social services for the work that would have been done prior to my having the privilege to sit in the chair, that has taken us to this point where we are able to go and make a report. Yes, and I want to say to former Minister Melanie Griffin, who would have been involved in our first presentation, and then to Minister Lanisha Rule, who's here present, who started all of this work. And I would have heard senior politicians stand in this place and talk about who sow and who reap. Well, I thank God, Mr. Speaker, that I'm able to be here on this end reaping this morning. and I'm satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that this work is continuous, as governments are continuous, and towards that end, I've embarked on a personal mission to meet with all former ministers of social services who would meet with me. I've already had the privilege to meet with Mr. Algernon Allen. I have the undertaking from 2 other former ministers that we will sit to ensure that there is continuity for anything that is likely to benefit the people that we would have claimed to, we would all at one point or another claim that we love and have an interest for and an interest in. As the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development with responsibility for the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, I'm committed to the further advancement and the protection of women's rights. I often share, Mr. Speaker, that I'm the father of 3 daughters. And like any other good father, I wish for their full advancement. My aspiration is to increase every effort to achieve as many recommendations as set out by CEDAW so as to empower as many women and girls, which will make for a better Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the goals, mandates, and article our country signed on to in 1993 are honorable and just. I must note that the process towards the elimination of discrimination is a journey and not a destination. The Bahamas celebrates only 45 years as an independent nation, and whilst our collective hope and political will for national equality and equity of resources and opportunities for all Bahamians are pure, the democratic process required to do so is slow. Rome was not built in a day, Mr. Speaker, and so our skills of strategic wisdom will be critical as our people embrace the constructive dialogue of national equality. Mr. Speaker, the CEDAW has several key articles, including constitutional rights and laws for women, equal employment pay for men and women, elimination of exploitation and violence against women, political quota, educational, economic, and health opportunities for women and girls. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that the government of the Bahamas held 2 constitutional referenda in 2012 and in 2016 to amend the fundamental rights and provisions for women. Unfortunately, and after much public education and many town meetings, Bahamians voted no. Whilst the amendments on gender equality failed, the Bahamas Nationality Act, 1973, Section 6, allows Bahamian women to apply to register their children as minors. Additionally, the Department of Immigration permits spouses of Bahamians, male or female, to apply for permanent residence status after 10 years of marriage. Mr. Speaker, we celebrate the amendment of the Sexual Offences Act 2014 and the Persons with Disabilities Act provide for further protection for all Bahamians, including our women. However, during recent meetings with the Disabilities Commission and the Secretariat, as well as with civil society Bahamas and non-governmental organizations, many complaints and suggestions were expressed for enforcement of these laws. Requests were made for the Sexual Offences Register or information for public regarding its progress. It was also noted that far too many persons illegally park in spaces designated for persons with disability without punishment. Mr. Speaker, I was even reminded that this honorable House and the upper chamber of the Senate are not in full compliance of the Act due to the challenges presented for a wheelchair person to easily access the second floor. Mr. Speaker, we celebrate our ratification of other international agreements, including the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the Convention Against Torture. We must collectively do our best to support and ensure the enforcement of all these laws and agreements which exist to provide our citizens with all the rights they deserve, especially since the Bahamas achieved a seat on the International Human Rights Committee just last week. Mr. Speaker, I wish to share notable achievements of Bahamian women nationally and internationally. Captain Francis Smith, Captain Gwendolyn Ritchie, and Captain Gail Saunders made aviation history when they were promoted to captains at Bahamas Air. Arintia Kamalafi, first female managing director of the Bahamas Development Bank. Glenys Hannah Martin served as regional chair of the Caribbean, Americas, and Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. She is also the first female to run for leadership of the Progressive Liberal Party. Loretta Butler Turner was the first female leader of the official opposition and first woman to run for the leader of the Free National Movement. Minister Lanisha Roll serves as regional chair of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, as well as the first woman Minister of Sports. Catherine Forbes Smith is the first female president of the Senate appointed out of New Providence. Chanel Ferguson serves as the whip of the House of Assembly. Marion Bethel Sayers became the 11th CARICOM Triennial Award winner in the category of gender development. She is also the first Bahamian female elected expert to serve on the CEDAW committee in Geneva. Betty Roberts is the recipient of the Bahamas Financial Services Board Lifetime Award. Natasha Walton, woman sub-lieutenant of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, led a platoon in the changing of the guard at Government House. Woman Corporal 2713 Desiree Bodie is a female captain and ground instructor of flight in the Aviation Air Wing of the Royal Bahamas Police Force. She is also an active member of Women in Aviation. Dr. Elaine Johnson is the first female Senate chaplain. Denise Lewis Johnson is the first female chairman of the BMA. And this morning, we witnessed our chaplain, Reverend Angela Palacios, here in the House of Assembly. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would have left out some names, I'm sure, because the achievement of women in our country is immense. And I was asked, I was told, Minister, be careful when you choose to call names because you might offend some persons who you leave out. To those persons whose names I didn't call, it is by no means an attempt to offend. But I thought it necessary to call names for the sake of our young persons for the sake of our young women, to remind them and make it clear to them that Bahamian women have achieved in every possible category in our country, and they too, while we celebrate the girl child, have every opportunity to do likewise. In its quest to fulfill CEDAW's powerful mandates, the Bureau of Women Affairs, now called the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, has endeavored to implement a 5-year plan to improve gender equality in the Bahamas, to implement initiatives from the National Strategic Plan for Ending Gender-Based Violence in the Bahamas, conduct monthly meetings with NGOs to strategize about issues impacting women, update the National Gender Equality Policy. An updated National Gender Equality Policy will soon be submitted to the Cabinet, coordinate events to commemorate women and also to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in the Bahamas, conduct school and community awareness seminars about CEDAW throughout New Providence, Grand Bahama, Cat Island, South Andros, Crooked Island, and Acklins, collaborate with the National Women's Advisory Council to host an educational forum on CEDAW for government, non-government, civil society organizations, and the media. Launch National Gender-Based Violence Awareness Campaign with presentations on sexual harassment to high school students. Conduct a rural women's survey to assess the needs and challenges of women and girls in our family islands. Develop financial partnerships with a number of civil society organizations, including the Bahamas Girls Guides Association, the Zonta Club, the Pilot Club, the Family of All Murdered Victims Forum, the Governor General's Youth Awards, Civil Society the Bahamas, Teen Life Challenge, Bahamas Against Crime, Save Our Daughters, Reclaiming Our Boys, Bahamas Crisis Center, Girl Con, and the list goes on, Mr. Speaker. Sponsored South Andros Jams Preservative Production and Atkins Crooked Island Straw Plaiting Project for Women and Girls. Partnered with the Cat Island Farmers Association to provide water tanks and generators to 8 female farmers. Sponsored 15 training sessions in New Providence and the Family Islands, which promoted women in political leadership. These were held in partnership with the University of the Bahamas and the Caribbean Institute of Women in Leadership. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Gender and Family Affairs will strive to eliminate cultural and traditional practices that perpetuate discrimination and gender stereotyping of women as it attempts to reduce the stereotypes of the roles of husbands and wives through public education and the media. A recent study conducted by the University of the Bahamas revealed that young men still maintain perceptions that the male is superior to the female and that they have the right, even a responsibility, to dominate the female. Sadly, there are also some young women who share these views. We want to utilize the Domestic Violence and Counseling Unit of the Ministry of Social Affairs, Social Services, to help victims of violence and their children. And we want to partner with the United Nations for the empowerment of women to participate in the government and community action for ending violence against women. Mr. Speaker, our government grants to non-governmental and religious organizations to facilitate their work in the support of victims of violence, including through shelters and counseling services, is critical and must continue. The recipients of these grants include the Crisis Center, the Links Safe House, the Salvation Army, Great Commission, Ministries, and the Bahamas AME Conference. Our ongoing partnership with the Royal Bahamas Police Force to provide training for police officers who help victims of gender-based violence is also powerful. More than 80 officers completed training sponsored by the Pan American Development Fund, and others participated in a 2-day workshop titled Educating Men and Women to Stop Domestic Violence. Mr. Speaker, we will work to increase women participation in political and public leadership. Meanwhile, we celebrate the current data, which reveals, Mr. Speaker, in the judiciary, 68% are females. In politics, the figure isn't sufficient to celebrate, but I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the door is open to females. Young females are being encouraged to step forward. The ministry and the director has undertaken to ensure that everything is done to encourage our women not to want to be put in office simply because they are women, but to want to demonstrate through their competence, through their zealous public service, that they are deserving, and to step forward and to ensure that the more than 50% female electorate in our country will consider them for elected public office. Additionally, 65% of our permanent secretaries are females. The secretary to the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, is a female. 68% of our educators are females. 45% of our physicians, 75% of our hospital administrators are females. 53% of our trade unionists in leadership in the Trade Union Congress are females. 42% in leadership the first one was the non-trade unions, and then the Trade Union Congress. In law enforcement, Mr. Speaker, females play a prominent role in leadership in the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Department of Immigration, the Department of Customs, the Department of Corrections, Mr. Speaker. And so, my point, not to be lost, is that once again, in every sector of our society, from top to bottom, from Governor General straight down, there is representation of our female. And this, Mr. Speaker, speaks to our preparedness, our maturity as a young 45-year-old nation to ensure that there's opportunity for equity, opportunity for equality. Mr. Speaker, I will end as I began. The road to the elimination of discrimination against women is a journey, Mr. Speaker, not a destination. I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to have in my hand the baton at this time. I express gratitude to those who would have passed the baton to me. I give the assurance with my able team, Mr. Speaker, that I will hold and guard the baton jealously. I will run as fast and as diligently as I can, Mr. Speaker. And knowing the value of the baton exchange, I promise, Mr. Speaker, for as long as I'm here, I will ensure that when it is time to hand this baton will be handed over with the same safety and security that it was handed to me, and that whoever succeeds me will have a smoother, a wider, a better paved road on which to continue this journey. Mr. Speaker, with that I thank you, and I will...
order that the communication be brought up.
You don't get it too often.
Order that the communication do lie on the table. Honorable members, just before we proceed, after such a communication, I think it would be appropriate to give you some words of Solomon. But particularly as we drive around the Bahamas today and we examine what is going on in our society, Solomon says this in Proverbs 12 and 11. He who works his land will have abundant food, but he who chases fantasies lacks judgment. And in Proverbs 14 and 23, it says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. And you know, as we drive around the Bahamas today, social media, Bahamians have become more talkers than doers. When I see, based on the communications already, that we're beginning to move in the direction of being doers as opposed to being complainers and just talkers. Further communications and statements by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I take cognizance of the words concerning the wisest man. In the book of Genesis, it teaches us that by the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread. Mr. Speaker, as I rise to give this communication on the Bahamas' election to the United Nations Human Rights Council, please permit me also to acknowledge among our distinguished visitors today, Commander Cheryl Bethel, who is one of the first of two females to be selected to attend Britannia Royal Naval College. From the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, she was also a member of the first female entry of our organization. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the presence of Jewel Major, with whom I worked in the Attorney General's office for a while, a distinguished counsel in that office. The Bahamas' election to the United Nations Human Rights Council for the period 2019-2021. Honorable members are advised that on 12th October 2018, the Bahamas was elected to a seat on the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, UN. The Human Rights Council is a UN intergovernmental body made up of 47 states responsible for the promotion and protection of all human rights worldwide. The Council was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 2006. Along with 17 other countries, the Bahamas was elected to serve a 3-year term beginning 1st January 2019. The Bahamas has now become the first CARICOM country and the first country of the English-speaking Caribbean to obtain a seat on the Council since its establishment. The Bahamas' candidature was launched under the previous administration and endorsed by CARICOM in 2016. Building on the efforts of the previous administration, this administration, in light of the importance attached to the promotion and protection of human rights, determined that it was important to pursue the candidature. Countries worldwide received the Bahamas' candidature positively, as was evidenced by the fact that the Bahamas received the highest number of votes among the Latin America and Caribbean group of countries. The Bahamas received 180 votes, with 177 to Uruguay and 172 to Argentina. Close. You think so? We have sent a message to our CARICOM colleagues thanking them for their dedicated support to the Bahamas, and as is customary, we have sent notes to the UN member states thanking them for having voted for us. There are many positive benefits that are likely to result from membership on the HRC, and these include helping to bring increased diversity to the membership of the Human Rights Council and to ensure that the international human rights discourse takes due account of the issues that impact small island developing states, including support for capacity building and technical assistance at the national and sub-regional levels, enhancing the visibility of the Bahamas on a global level as it demonstrates the depth of its commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights, nationally and internationally, and by extension, enhancing the profile of CARICOM in this regard. Profiting from the HRC's work in developing best practices in the field of human rights and opportunities afforded through the Council and its mechanisms to support national, regional, and international human rights protection efforts. Being at the cutting edge of discussion on the human rights dimensions of issues such as irregular migration, trafficking in persons, arms transfers, transshipment of hazardous substances and waste, trade, economic development, climate change, and health and sustainable development, as well as country-specific human rights situations in our region and beyond. It will also give us an opportunity to establish and strengthen bilateral partnerships with fellow council members and others on issues within and beyond the scope of human rights. Better opportunities to put forward the names of Bahamians be appointed as independent experts or special rapporteurs to monitor human rights and so on. During the term of the Bahamas' membership on the Council, it is expected that there will be 3 regular sessions convened annually, February/March, June, and September, each lasting some 3 weeks. A 1-week ministerial high-level segment, HLS, is held during the February-March session. The HLS, as is normally the case with meetings of this nature, provides an invaluable opportunity to meet ministers from virtually every country in the world and heads or senior level officials of the United Nations agencies. The regular sessions and other meetings, such as the sessions of the Working Group of the Universal Periodic Review, will be covered by technical staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Office of the Attorney General. During our membership, we are committed to tackle the nexus of human rights in areas such as climate change, sustainable development, and the impact of per capita GNP on development, and give import to disability, rights of the child and young people, gender equality, capacity building, and technical assistance. There will be other serious topical issues of international import to address during the Bahamas' term on the Council, of which we will take positions after careful research and evaluation of all the facts. I will keep honorable members apprised throughout our membership on the Council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the communication be brought up.
Speaker, I also attach to the communication a copy of the press release from the United Nations announcing our election and a note of thanks which we issued to those countries that I mentioned.
Order that the communication will lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Thank you.
At this time, the member for Eggleston to speak to the issue of CEDAW. It's a little bit uncustomary, but we thought in the whole spirit of what we seek to do going forward in this country, that we will give the minister, the member for Engliston, an opportunity.
For posterity purposes, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Engliston.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaker, I want to thank the side opposite for giving me, they said 5 minutes. The Prime Minister did like that. No, but I won't be long. No, I won't be long. I won't be long. I want to thank the minister because I think that my standing is in the spirit of what he is bringing to the table, and I think that he brought to his former portfolio in terms of a much more embracing spirit to issues that impact the quality of life of Bahamians in general and women in particular. And I just want to commend the team that has been, many of them, very long at this effort. The Bahamas still continues to have unequal rights in the Constitution. We've had 2 referenda, both of which failed, became subject of political dialogue and also some extraneous dialogue about the meaning of the provisions, gay marriages and all this kind of thing. And as a result, the Bahamas remains one of the few countries where our national constitution, which is the fundamental document of our nationhood and our national identity, continues to have rights that are different and superior for men than they have for women. And so, and of course, the question arises to what extent unequal rights feeds into a perception that women are in fact humanly unequal, and that therefore can be the subject of activities which are negative and demeaning, such as rape and other forms of violence, domestic violence. And so I think that a fundamental step forward in eliminating these issues will begin with the legal reform, and then we work on the cultural reform, which will feed into that. So I want to commend the minister who brought great passion and spirit to his presentation, and to the team, and I trust that when they go to Switzerland to present, that they're able to, I guess, to put in context the struggle that we have in the Bahamas. I certainly look forward to the day when women will be viewed as equal citizens and humans in our own country. And Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I just wanted to also, for the nurses from the Public Hospitals Authority and members of the Alliance of Visually Impaired, I don't know what the correct name is, commend them. When the Rights of Persons with Disability legislation was passed, I thought it was one of the finest moments in our national life, because it brought legal, it enhanced the way in which people with disabilities are viewed in our country. It accorded full legal rights, raised the awareness of people with disabilities, and expanded and extended our view of humanity. And I thought it was really one of our finest moments. And so the fact that we are now bringing a focus to diseases, it's not always diseases. Some people are born visually impaired, but disease plays a very important role in the amount of visually impaired persons, particularly diabetes and other chronic non-communicable diseases. And so hopefully out of this, we can raise an awareness, eradicate or seek to eradicate these diseases, and seek to enhance quality of life. But for those who will not find remediation through treatment, medical treatment or otherwise, we are happy that our laws are now constructed in a way in which it will seek to facilitate and enhance the quality of life of people who have impairments of this nature or of any nature. And so I commend the work of the Public Hospital Authority, the minister and the nurses, and express our full support for your work. And if we can help with the educational process or in any way to advocate the work that you're doing, we are with you. We embrace our people fully in this regard. And please count us in, Member for Elizabeth, in the work that you're doing, and if there's anything that we can do to deepen and enhance the consciousness of this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, at this point, we'd like to take a 10-minute break. We'd like for the House to break for 10 minutes so that we have an opportunity to take a picture with those from CEDAW, so we give the political directorate an opportunity collectively together to take that picture. So I do move that the House suspends for 10 minutes.
I do second that, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend for 10 minutes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended for 10 minutes.
All right.
Honorable members, there being no further statements and communication by ministers, we move on the agenda on the order of business. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I'd like to be very brief and to say to members of the Baptist community, congratulations to them. I had a chance to share at the Bahamas National Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention last evening over there at Mount Horeb, where the president serves as the local the president of the National Convention, where the president serves as the local pastor, Reverend Dr. Lloyd C. Smith, and to be there for his inaugural address last evening. As they celebrated the Reverend Dr. Bishop Michael C. Simonette as the father of Baptists, and the Reverend Dr. Morena Sands as the mother of Baptists. We want to celebrate them this morning along with all those who are members of the Baptist and the Christian community by extension as they observe their special week. Also I'd like to note that this is also the culmination of National Youth Month, and to commend the members of the youth fraternity headed by the minister and all the youth officers of our country, and also those in the South Central and Mangrove Key District. Tomorrow I'll be going down to South Andros in the afternoon to be there for the administrators' walk, youth walk on Friday morning. I don't know if we call it the youth walk for my age, at the prostate testing age, but I'll be there for the walk on Friday. Then on Friday afternoon, we would matriculate over to Mangrove Key for the youth activities there. Then on Saturday, it's going to be their special event. On Sunday, it's a church service planned between South and Mangrove Key. Just last weekend, we were in Fresh Creek, Central Andros at the high school there with Mrs. Thompson for the Andros Got Talent Special night. And I want to commend those young people in Central Andros who continue to do well, to make us proud. As we celebrate our young people, I can't help but note the words of admonition as expressed by our chaplain this morning, that we should look at having various family islands in particular, the Proud Island Boy, connoted as heritage and cultural sports in our society. And I hope it's something that we can come together on so that we can make certain, have certain areas designated or in our country for certain days of observation and celebration. And I want to say to her, to the chaplain this morning, I want to commend her. I think her commentary was very timely, and through God's grace and our people working and going beyond just talk, we could continue to make it happen. For those who are concerned about the Youth Month and wanting to have the gymnasium completed, I would have conferred and spoken with the member for Carmichael, my friend. We go way, way back. And I can assure them that next year, we'll have the Speaker praying from the auditorium in South Andros, in the Bluff to be exact, and we should be able to carry, like Papa would have done years ago, maybe have Parliament on the floors, on the parquet floor in the Bluff, South Andros next year. You heard it from your Member of Parliament, from this honorable house to you. God bless you, and let's have a great time together. Thank you very much.
Further member statement?
Sorry.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I just wanted to, excuse me, again raise an issue that I raised last week, which is the students at the University of West Indies, the medical and dentistry students. It appears as if we had gotten certain assurances from the Minister of Education, and but from what I'm understanding, up until this morning, there's been no resolution. I'm told that many of the students have been locked out of the internet learning resources and materials, and that in a few days, they all face, at the end of this month, the risk of being excluded from classes. Apparently there was some confusion about the policy and the policy shift or whatever it is. They were not aware. I'm told also that there are at least 4 dentistry students in Nassau who left employment and who made sacrifices to engage in, to enlist in the program, and they have since been basically rug pulled from under them. And then you have dentistry students that are there now at UWI in the Caribbean, and you have these medical students. There are many, many, many of them, and it's been now, it has more than a month, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, and I think it is overdue. I had recommended, and I do recommend, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Education, and then if I could be so bold as to say, to get on a plane or send a permanent secretary and to go to UWI and sit down with them and resolve the issue. You have scores of young people at UWI who are in uncertainty. If I've been in university, and the uncertainty that must be plaguing those young people and the anxiety about not knowing what is what. Most of them are postgraduate. They have first degrees, and they can't apply anywhere else. They can't apply anywhere else. You've lost a whole year. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very serious matter, and I'm calling on the government to please bring immediate attention and regularize the status. If you want to change the policy, you can do that, but you can't do it this time. You've not given sufficient notice. It's not fair, and it's not right, Speaker. And so I'm asking that the government please bring a focus to these young people and give them the assurance that they need, that they can continue their careers. I know the Minister of Health indicated that they can't be absorbed in 60, they can't be absorbed from the reports that I saw. But you got to find a plan. Sometimes you got to find a plan based on what you're dealing with, and this is what you're dealing with. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just feel that there is not a sense of urgency, and there seems to be a disconnect in terms of understanding the severity of the plight that these young people are experiencing. And I'm asking the government to have an empathetic understanding of what these people are going through, and their families, their parents, and to please finally now resolve the matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Further member statement. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
May it please the honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is noted the submission by the honorable member from Angliston, and I have spoken in this House about this particular issue previously. This is a complex issue, Mr. Speaker. Let me be very clear about it. It is a matter which the honorable member for Elizabeth and myself, as the Minister of Health, a part of the Cabinet Subcommittee, is addressing at this time. This matter is going to be resolved in the shortest possible time, Mr. Speaker. We have been and are in communication with the University of the West Indies. The university, unfortunately, has not complied with several requests that have been made by my office to provide us with a complete list of the students on all of their campuses, their respective disciplines, their respective years of such disciplines. We have, at this time, sir, only received such information from the campus in Trinidad, the campus in Barbados. We are still waiting that information from Mona. This is, Mr. Speaker, an issue which has long-range implications. And it must be very, very carefully considered and a decision made with regard to the way that we will operate going forward in this respect. There are clear policies that are established in the Scholarship and Loan Division of the Ministry of Education, very clear policies. Those policies are well known to the University of the West Indies. Despite that knowledge, Mr. Speaker, certain actions have been taken, which now have placed, unfortunately, some of our students in these precarious circumstances. Be that as it may, sir, this issue will be resolved. It is now being attended to deliberately, assiduously by myself and the Honorable Member for Elizabeth, and so it will be resolved for the benefit of our Bahamian students.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me first say a wonderful good afternoon to all of the constituents in Marco City and the wider Grand Bahama community and Bahamians everywhere. Mr. Speaker, as you would be aware, we have had tremendous challenges for decades now in terms of persons poaching in Bahamian waters, sports fishermen in the north, and primarily Dominicans in the south. I'd like to congratulate the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and all of our national and international partners, and to commend Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of National Security, and the entire law enforcement team, inclusive of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Commodore Tellis Bethel, and of course, on the back end of the incredible work done by the Defense Force will be the work done by the Royal Bahamas Police Force and, of course, the fisheries officers at the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. Mr. Speaker, very briefly, I'd like to single out the team that has worked with Sub-Lieutenant Stirrup, who has done an amazing job, Sub-Lieutenant Williams, Senior Lieutenant Williams, and of course, Sub-Lieutenant Stirrup. Okay, William Stirrup, who has done an incredible job. Of the 5 interdictions done recently, he's been responsible for 4 of them. Mr. Speaker, this young man, and he is a very young man with an amazing team, during the first week of my appointment as Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources, he and a team of about 13 on the Madeira intercepted the vessel Roni, and you'd be aware we had over 60,000 pounds of seafood product on that vessel. The 3 vessels that have been brought in, Mr. Speaker, are presently being assessed as we speak, but I can tell you, having gone down in the whole of the largest of the vessels, the catch on that vessel comfortably far more than double what was found on the Roni. It is really a rape and pillage of our marine resources, and it is a matter that has been troublesome and pressing for successive administrations. And so, Mr. Speaker, it has fallen the lot of the Minis administration to address this issue, to build on work done by our predecessors, and we intend to fully address this issue. Mr. Speaker, 3 vessels on that one fateful day that was brought in represents quite possibly hundreds of other vessels that are making incursions into Bahamian waters. What is even more troubling is the willingness of persons who are already acting illegally to compound matters by firing on Bahamian law enforcement as they only seek to do their jobs. Mr. Speaker, two things. One is, today, I wish to say to a number of Bahamians who are calling a number of us that the way in which the system works, there are no members of Parliament, no ministers that have the capacity to provide you with seafood as a result of this catch. The process is As we speak, the wonderful, hard-working staff of the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources have officers who are working in tandem with the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Ministry of Finance. And what they do is they take inventory. And so they would do a count, they would then do a weighing, and then of course Finance has the responsibility for an auction or any deviation thereof. So I know a number of organizations have requested, organizations not who are doing cookouts, organizations that are already feeding people have made requests for assistance. I'm not neither confirming here or there what the response will be, but I'm simply saying the process is assessment, weighing, and then Finance determines what happens with the asset. No one in the Parliament or in the Cabinet of the Bahamas have the capacity to provide lobster, scalefish, conch, or crabs. And Mr. Speaker, the catch that I would not elaborate more except to say that we've made a firm commitment as a cabinet on a number of provisions, and then others are being considered. One, the Fisheries Act is in fact being amended. It will be carried to the cabinet in November, and we would wish to thank the advisory committee that has been working diligently, and it's comprised of stakeholders from all sectors, including fishers themselves. Secondly, there is a commitment to ensure that in that legislation there is increased penalty for especially the boat captain. We are also committed to pursuing diligently, home and abroad, the owners of these vessels, some of whom may be American, Dominicans, and quite possibly even Bahamians. We will investigate and we'll spare no effort to do so. There is a call that is consistent with the view of many of my colleagues that a number of these vessels should be sunk and to make reefs in Bahamian waters. But we also wish to say that there's also a need for vessels for scientific research purposes, and BAMSI has made a petition to the cabinet to also utilize, if only a couple of them, strictly for training purposes. There is no intention to allow these vessels to get back in the hands of fishers. If the fishers from the Dominican Republic or the United States or wealthy Bahamians who are already not acting in good faith, if these vessels are made available, the concern is that the vessels could end up back into their hands. And then secondly, a Bahamian on a Dominican vessel which has a distinct look can often cause Defense Force officers to be pursuing a vessel that Bahamians are at the helm, only to expend more money just pursuing a vessel than we actually made from selling the actual vessel. So we wish to rule that out for those persons who are calling our office asking when they could put in a bid for these vessels. There will be no possibility of you putting in a bid. I've also said, Mr. Speaker, just over the past 2 days, for those persons who now have requests for compressor permits before the ministry, you have applied at the very wrong time, I must say. And it is very difficult to find a good rationale for us at this time to continue to process these work permits. We are prepared, obviously, in every case where an application is made, to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. I am only saying the cases I have seen recently, those cases do not look good, and I'd like to commend the commercial fishers who I've spoken to this week when I made mention of the reasons, who said they are disappointed but they completely understand. I appreciate that level of patriotism and nationalism from those fishers. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just wish to say once again, congratulations to all of the partners who've been working, and to say to the fishers themselves that let us continue to work together. Do not establish a moving goalpost. The call was made for stiffer, for fines to be hefty. The courts delivered a remarkable set of fines, ranging, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of 2.3 million, some rounded off, which I like very much, to 3 million. And that created enthusiasm for a few days before persons went back on the warpath. This cannot be a moving goalpost. Progress is being made. Are we there yet? No. Are we making progress? Yes. 3 vessels were interdicted and are in port with 124 Dominicans. Just recently, another vessel was interdicted. The call was for the Defense Force to step up and do its job, for fisheries to step up and do its job. The job was done, and again, enthusiasm was, as it is today, generated before, again, the criticisms resume. We're saying we're all in this together. We don't wish for one fishing vessel to discontinue operating. But the truth is, this administration is concerned about the fisheries vessels. We're also concerned about every business that is at risk of being closed, every laborer that's at risk of being laid off. All of us in all sectors, we're in this together, and we wish to assure you we are working on your behalf. Keep the faith.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statement. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Central and South Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I have the unfortunate task of acknowledging the passing of Mr. Colin Curry of Spring City, Abaco, who succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was a community stalwart, very active in local government, particularly the young persons in his community, through Junkanoo, but also through many, many other ways. So I thought it would be appropriate to acknowledge his passing and to express not only my own personal, but on behalf of the entire people of Central and South Abaco, sincere condolences to his family, his friends, and of course, the entire community of Spring City, where he was very beloved. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to acknowledge his passing, and he will be sorely, sorely missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statements. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to express heartfelt condolences to Ms. Laureen Joseph of Connecticut, United States of America, and I see your face move. But it is the passing of someone who's near and dear to me, the patriarch of our family, Mr. John Dossett, from New Bight, Dowd, Kid Island. And as I heard, no man likes the sound of his mother crying. And on hearing my mother in that state, the only thing that I could have said to her to console her is that he had no choice in the matter, and that God gives and God takes away. And I also advised her that I did not want to lose her. And so if she didn't calm down, we may have 2 funerals. And so I just want to say to that small community down there that I express condolences. I'm also in grief for the passing of my uncle, as I could recall as a boy. One of the biggest things as a young boy is to have a man see him sharpen his cutlass and to say that you will accompany him to the field clear to create a farming plot. And so he was near and dear to us. He came to New Providence, he was a taxi driver, and when we came on the boat, we look forward to him collecting us from the mail boat, taking us around, and being Bala. And everybody has a Bala in their family, Bala. And he was Bala to us. So to all my aunts, to all of my relatives, on the 27th of this month, we will have a memorial service, Dowd, Kid Island. And if God spare my life, I intend to be there. And this weekend, there will be a service in Connecticut where he will be cremated and his ash will be flown back to the Bahamas. But I know that my aunt, my beloved aunt, she sits and she watches by Facebook. So I want to say to you, Aunt Lorraine, God bless you, we love you, and I'll see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for North Abaco.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to join my voice with that of my brother from South and Central Abaco in extending condolences to the family of Colin Curry, who was a giant in our community. As indicated, did lots of work with Junkanoo, with the young people. His family extends into the Ferguson family, who is a prominent family in our community. And so we add our voices with heartfelt condolences. We also, on the weekend, Mr. Speaker, lost Sherelle Roberts Ogle, a family. She's from a family from Treasure Key, Berkeley and Andre Roberts, and we extend our condolences to them as well. And this untimely passing of their daughter. I said to her father on Sunday, I think it was, that, you know, parents are not meant to bury their children. And so we assure them at this time of our prayers and continued thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to express sincere condolences to the family of Sister Frances Cox in Fox Hill, who passed away on Sunday morning. I'd like to say to them that there is no hurt or pain that God cannot heal. I'd also like to say to the motorists along Bernard Road in Fox Hill that the road works continue, and we apologize for the inconvenience, but it is all in an effort to give you the road that you deserve, type of road that is the main thoroughfare through Fox Hill, and the work progresses. We are giving you, in the area where it has been very dangerous, by the two big silk cotton trees, extra space. We're going 4 feet to the north so that traffic can pass without having to stop. It has been a dangerous place, and thank God we have not had loss of life there. So I'd like to thank the Minister of Works and his team, a very able team, a team that is working very well with me in Fox Hill, and in short space of time, Bernard Road will be the model road for New Providence. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pinewood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take this time on behalf of all the residents in Pinewood, the benefactors of the service of Mr. Kalish Roll and the sacrifice of his wife, because behind every man and even woman of service, there are spouses and children who sacrifice for us to be here. They're the ones who feel the pains of our criticism, and they're the ones who feel the neglect of our service. His wife has passed, and as the leader of my community, it is my duty to ensure that we all show due respect, kindness for the virtue that was extended to his service. So I want to extend on behalf of the community of Pinewood condolences to Mr. Kalish Roll, the extended family also of Nadia, his wife, even the Kiwanis family, because she's a part of the Kiwanis community as she moves into this new transition, into the newness of life. So we give God praise. Also, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take the time to acknowledge the ascension of Glenada Roll, wonderful man of service in the community of Pinewood, to the office of most worshipful master. I think it's the Transcendency Lodge of the Turks and Caicos Island. He'll be taking that office tomorrow. I'll do my best to be there and be there on time, because he also provides stellar service to our community. I want to wish a special happy birthday to a man that's very important in my life, my godfather, Leon Lorenzo Taylor. His birthday was on yesterday, and to remind everybody that the Pinewood Festival will be held on the 17th of November. It is a very important time at which we would seek to honor some additional people in our community. But again, on behalf of the community of Pinewood, a very grateful people, we extend our love, our respect, and our condolences to the family of Kalish Roll.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meeting. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Speaker, I think it's your prayers. The House is very sober today. There's much sobriety in this environment today, so we'll continue in that vein. But I'd like to say that the member for Angleton, the senior member, also would like to, as an addendum, join the member for Pine Wood in noting that we want to say condolences to a former colleague on the passing of his wife, the Honorable Kayla's Roll. On behalf of the leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition in his absence, along with the deputy, we extend the same to their family. And also, Mr. Speaker, because I only got 30 seconds to do it, I'd also like to also commend what I saw this morning with members from North Abaco, the member for Marco City, and also the member for Southern Shores, in presenting their reports, their ministerial reports today. Well presented, well thought out, mature, and complimentary when needed. That was good for the House today. And it's good for this, and it shows the Bahamas that we can take our game to another level. And I want to commend my colleagues today. So as we stand to say we support all those notices standing in our name, and as the Prime Minister, I guess as Acting Minister of Finance, and would have heard the plight for the member for Angleton in the same spirit of collegiality, we would therefore support a small resolution so that if there's a money bill, that we can also bring some remediation to the challenges of our students in Trinidad, Jamaica, and Barbados. All notices standing in our name. Majesty's Loyal Opposition remains. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to renew all notices in the name of the government and to signal, Mr. Speaker, to notify this House at our very next sitting. It is the intention of this government to debate a resolution approving a 5-year lease with the landlord of the Town Center Mall for the relocation of the General Post Office. Mr. Speaker, I will read the resolution in a moment, but it was our intention, Mr. Speaker, to table this resolution today and to come back tomorrow to the House to have this issue fully ventilated before the Bahamian people. I believe that this would have been the very first time that a government would bring this kind of resolution. The fact that there's the sitting cabinet minister who is involved, I may be disabused of that, but I believe it may be the first time. Yes. But Mr. Speaker, we intended to have this issue fully ventilated. And as I said, we were going to have this issue debated tomorrow. But the leader of the opposition had called the Prime Minister yesterday, and both he and the deputy leader of the opposition are out of the country, both today and tomorrow. And the Prime Minister, in a sense of fairness and the whole spirit of collegiality, decided that we will suspend the debate for tomorrow and allow fully for the participation of both the leader of the opposition and the deputy leader. And so, Mr. Speaker, with that, I would read the resolution that will be debated next week, Wednesday, when both the leader and deputy leader of the opposition will be here. Mr. Speaker, whereas the General Post Office building on East Hill Street in the city of Nassau has been condemned as being structurally unsound while suffering also from periodic deep-rooted mold infestation, particularly black mold and other harmful environmental pathogens. And whereas staff working in the General Post Office have taken repeated industrial action complaining that working conditions in the existing building are inhumane and insufferable, and whereas efforts to build a new post office building at the Independence Shopping Center was met with resounding objections and rejections by the residents of the surrounding communities, who asserted that their quality of life would be irredeemably, negatively affected by such a structure in the shopping center. And whereas the government has worked assiduously to identify a suitable alternative site to relocate the General Post Office, and in particular acquire the Old Phil's Food Service building on Gladstone Road, but only recently discovered that the latent hidden structural defects and other technical issues would require a massive expenditure of taxpayer dollars in conducting extensive renovation of the entire building, which would take at least a year or more, and so would not provide the timely relief for customers and staff of the General Post Office who have suffered for so many years. And whereas the owners of the Town Center Mall sued situated at the northeast intersection of Blue Hill and Independence Drive, have agreed to rent suitable space for the relocation of all functions of the General Post Office to that site at the generous and commercially concessionary rate of $12 per square foot, far below the going commercial rates for business premises in the island of New Providence. And whereas one of the beneficial owners of the said town center mall is a serving cabinet minister who did not take part in the discussions leading to the decision to accept the offer to lease portions of the building, which will be made suitable for the operations of the General Post Office at the expense of the landlord, which minister has nonetheless declared his interest. Now be it hereby resolved that this House approves the government entering into a 5-year leasehold agreement with the landlord of the Town Center Mall for the relocation of all functions of the General Post Office, pending the construction of a new General Post Office by the government by way of a public-private partnership.
Order that the resolution be brought up. Order that the notice do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. Mr. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns until October the 24th, Wednesday, at 10 a.m., 2018.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, just before I put the motion, we are approaching lunchtime, and tomorrow happens to be a special day in my life when an additional and the caterers have generously provided some amenities for members. So I encourage you to participate when we adjourn. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House adjourn to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 24th of October. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
Second, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House adjourns until Wednesday at 10 a.m. October 24th. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 24th of October.
All right.